This happened during the summer of 2021 when I was 19 and living at home while taking online classes. My parents were away on a cruise for their anniversary, so I had the whole house to myself for a week. We live in a small town in Missouri, not rural exactly, but quiet. One of those neighborhoods where nothing serious ever happens, so you let your guard down. It was a Friday night and I was just enjoying the peace. I'd ordered some Chinese takeout, had music going, and was half watching a documentary on my laptop. I wasn't drunk or high or anything, completely sober, just relaxed. Around 10 p.m., I let our dog Murphy outside into the backyard. He's a small mutt, pretty chill, never really barks unless there's something to bark at. I stepped out with him for a second to feel the night air. It was warm, kind of humid, and I remember it being really still. No wind, no crickets. Murphy froze at the edge of the patio. He didn't bark, just stared at the back corner of the yard near the old tool shed. Then he let out a low growl. I squinted into the dark, but couldn't see anything. The sensor light back there had gone out months ago and never got fixed. I figured maybe it was a raccoon or a possum. I called Murphy back in. He kept looking at that corner the whole way until I shut the sliding door. Back inside, I started to feel uneasy. I locked the back door, which I don't always do, and drew the curtains. I even turned off the music just so I could listen. Nothing. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was just getting in my own head. But around 11:30, I heard something from the front of the house. A soft tap, not knocking, just tapping, like fingernails on glass. I was in the living room at the time, and the sound was coming from the big window near the front door. I sat perfectly still. It happened again. Tap, tap, tap. Murphy was staring at the window now, low growl in his throat. His ears were pinned back, tail stiff. I walked slowly to the front window and carefully moved the curtain just a bit. Nobody was there, at least not right in front of the window. But across the street, half hidden behind a tree, was a person, just standing there. Couldn't see their face clearly, but they were facing the house. Not walking, not moving, just watching. I shut the curtain fast and backed away. My hands were shaking. I went around and made sure every door and window was locked. Then I turned off all the lights inside and went upstairs to my bedroom, Murphy right on my heels. I sat there in the dark, listening. About 10 minutes later, there was another noise. Thump. Not a knock, a thump, like something hitting the side of the house. Then again, from another wall, closer this time. I peeked out my bedroom window, which overlooks the backyard. That's when I saw movement. Someone was in the yard, walking slowly along the side of the house. They had something in their hand, long, maybe a stick or crowbar. They stopped near the patio door, like they were trying to see inside. I called 911. The dispatcher kept me on the phone, asked me to stay quiet, and said an officer was already on the way. The guy must have heard something, because suddenly he bolted across the yard, jumped the fence, and was gone into the night. The police showed up 5 minutes later. They searched the area but didn't find anyone. I showed them the footprints in the dirt near the patio. The officer said it looked like the guy had circled the house more than once. Then he showed me something he'd picked up in the yard. It was a Ziploc bag with a folded piece of paper inside. No fingerprints on the bag. The note just had one sentence written in all caps. "I like this one." They never found out who it was. I stayed with my friend the rest of the week until my parents got back. When I told them what happened, my dad had motion lights installed and got a Ring camera. A few weeks later, I came home from class to find a dead squirrel left on the back patio. Just sitting there. Not chewed up. No blood. Just placed there neatly. The Ring footage showed nothing. No person, no animal. Just 1 minute it wasn't there, and the next it was. I haven't been home alone since. This happened back in 2015 when I was still living at my parents' house during my first year of community college. They had gone away for the weekend to visit my aunt in Virginia, and I stayed behind because I had a bunch of assignments to finish. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Pennsylvania, on a cul-de-sac where nothing ever really happened. The kind of place where people still left their doors unlocked sometimes. I remember it was a Friday night, around 11:30 p.m., and I was in my room on the second floor working on a paper. I had my headphones on, some lo-fi playlist running in the background. It had started to rain, and the white noise of it hitting the windows was kind of relaxing. At some point, I took a break and went downstairs to get a snack. That's when I noticed the porch light was off. That was weird because it's always on automatically at night. I flipped the switch a few times, but it didn't come back on. Figured maybe the bulb just blew. I got my snack, just a granola bar, and went back upstairs. About half an hour later, I thought I heard something. Not loud, just a subtle noise behind my headphones, like a dull bump. I paused the music, listened. Nothing. Could have been the fridge kicking on, I thought. Or maybe the rain. I went back to writing. Then, maybe 10 minutes later, I heard it again. A very distinct creak. This time I recognized it. It was the floorboard right inside the front door. It has this very specific groan whenever you step on it. Anyone who's ever been in that house knows the sound. I pulled off my headphones and sat there, frozen. I knew I hadn't locked the door. It was something I told myself I'd do before going to bed, and I just hadn't yet. Stupid. I stood up quietly and crept out of my room into the hallway. The staircase goes straight down to the front door, and from where I stood, I could just barely see the top of it. I didn't see anything, but the door was ajar, not wide open, just slightly, enough that someone could have slipped in. My heart was pounding now. I didn't have anything on me except my phone. I didn't even have shoes on. I stepped slowly down the stairs one at a time, careful not to make noise. I stopped halfway when I noticed something at the bottom, a shadow. Not one that belonged to me and not cast from outside. Someone was standing just to the side of the doorway, behind the wall that separated the entry from the living room. I couldn't see them fully, just their boot and part of their jeans. They weren't moving. They were just standing there waiting. I backed up slowly, step by step, until I was back in the hallway. I didn't know if they had seen me. I didn't want to risk it. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and called 911. I whispered to the dispatcher what was happening. She told me to stay on the line, stay calm, and that officers were being sent immediately. I sat there for what felt like forever, trying not to make a sound. At some point, I thought I heard footsteps on the stairs. Just a few, then nothing, then silence. The dispatcher was still on the line, asking me if I was okay, if I could still hear anything. I told her I thought they might be upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard a loud knock, then a voice shouting, "Police!" They went through the house with me after I let them in. The front door was still slightly open. The lock hadn't been forced. The officers said it was possible someone just took advantage of it being unlocked. They found muddy footprints on the tile near the front door, but nothing upstairs, which was weird considering I thought I'd heard someone on the steps. They didn't find anyone. Whoever it was had already slipped out. They figured the guy might have run when he heard me call the cops. They asked if anything had been stolen, but as far as I could tell, nothing was missing. Then one of the officers asked me to come look at something. He pointed to the side window near the dining room. It had smudges on it, like someone had pressed their face and hands against the glass. And near the base of the window, on the hardwood floor, was something else. A small pocket knife, not open, just sitting there, like it had been placed deliberately. I told them it wasn't mine. They took it in as evidence. They said it could have been worse, that whoever it was might have been testing doors all along the street looking for one that was unlocked. They recommended I change the locks and invest in a security system. I stayed at a friend's place that night. But here's the thing that still bothers me. The following Monday after my parents came back, I told them everything. My dad was pissed I hadn't locked the door, but he was glad nothing worse happened. Later that evening, my mom called me into the living room and asked me to look at something. She was holding a small black notebook. She said she found it under the couch while vacuuming. It wasn't ours. Inside were a bunch of scribbles, mostly nonsense, like fragments of sentences, shapes, numbers. But on the third page, written in messy handwriting, were the words, "Basement next time, quieter." We don't even have a basement.